Make sure their door stays open just wide enough just in case he's ready to finish what they barely started, because when Kyrie, it only took 9 seconds. A clip of LeBron and Giannis at a private gym in LA talking, laughing, nodding in sync, just long enough to get social media fired up and sports talk shows foaming at the mouth. The caption, "Scary loading." Within minutes, the takes started flying. LeBron's building another monster. Giannis finally joins a real system, Superteam, incoming. But while the rest of the league reacted like the Avengers were reassembling, Kyrie Irving didn't flinch. He'd seen this movie before. Stars linking up, narratives forming overnight, entire seasons reshaped by a single training clip. But for Kyrie, that's not fear, that's nostalgia. Because once upon a time, he was the headline. He was the one forming history, shifting duos, and unlike everyone speculating today, he actually won doing it. So when reporters asked him about the video, all Kyrie did was laugh. Not in spite, not in arrogance, but in full clarity. Because to him, the hype wasn't threatening. It was familiar, predictable even. He wasn't dismissing Giannis or LeBron. He was dismissing the assumption that this was new ground, like he hadn't already built and broken one of the most iconic partnerships in NBA history. Let the world panic. Let the feed spiral. Let the headlines try to draw lines where there aren't any. Kyrie, he's watching it all unfold and keeping his cool, because when you've already lived the fire, the smoke doesn't scare you anymore. By the next morning, every sports network had fully locked in First Take, Undisputed, Get Up, even late-night shows, all of them looping the same clip of LeBron and Giannis slowed down, zoomed in, and broken down like it was footage from a political summit. The message clear. Something big was coming. And with every frame, the hype sniffled. Outballed, this could be the most dominant frontcourt ever assembled. Giannis finally gets to play with someone who sees the whole floor like he does. If this happens, is the West all ready? Speculation turned into projection. Projections turned into declarations. Mock trade packages hit X and Reddit like wildfire. Designers were already photoshopping Giannis in purple and gold, standing beside LeBron, arms crossed, eyes locked on a Larry O'Brien trophy. Fan accounts declared a three-peat before the first lock. That roster move even happened. And yet, amid all the noise, no one stopped to ask, what does this mean for everyone else? For Kyrie, the media's obsession wasn't just about excitement, it was erasure. Every take seemed to forget that super teams didn't start with Giannis and LeBron. They didn't begin in secret gym sessions or hypothetical trades. They were born in battles, in chemistry, in cold-blooded shots with everything on the line. And no one, not a single host or analyst, bothered to mention that Kyrie had been at the heart of all that before. Instead, they focused on what could be while ignoring what already was. Fever Pitch wasn't just about LeBron and Giannis, it was about rewriting history, and Kyrie could hear it loud and clear, but he didn't post, didn't reply, didn't interrupt the celebration, because unlike the rest of the league, Kyrie wasn't buying tickets to the hype show. He's been the show, and he knows exactly how it ends when the lights get too bright, too fast. It wasn't said into a mic at the podium. It wasn't scripted, rehearsed, or delivered with a media strategy in mind. It was casual, almost too casual. Kyrie had just wrapped practice hoodie up, head down, not looking for a headline. And then someone asked the inevitable, "What do you think of the Giannis-LeBron Superteam talk?" He didn't roll his eyes, he didn't walk away, he just smiled like someone who'd seen this movie before and then dropped the line that detonated the entire conversation. "That's cute, but good luck." 7 words, no follow-up, no clarification, no tweet to explain what he meant, because he didn't need to. The internet exploded before he could even reach the tunnel. Clips of it hit Instagram, Twitter took it and ran. SportsCenter looped it like it was Game 7 footage. But what made it hit so hard wasn't just the wording, it was the tone. Kyrie didn't sound angry, he didn't sound threatened. He sounded like a man who'd already seen this hype machine eat itself alive and was watching it wind up again. Like clockwork, because this wasn't the first time the league lost its mind over a super team, he's lived it. He was at the center of one in Brooklyn. He built one beside LeBron in Cleveland. He watched another form in Golden State, fueled by the obsession to chase what he and Bron pulled off in 2016. He's watched the press turn locker rooms into battlegrounds, watched expectations weigh down entire franchises before the team even laced up. He's seen how quick a dream team becomes a tabloid soap opera. How the chemistry gets tested not on the court, but under bright lights and louder headlines, and that's why his comment landed like it did. That's cute, not mocking LeBron or Giannis, but the idea that talent alone equals dominance. But good luck, not sarcastic, but dead honest. Good luck managing the pressure. Good luck balancing usage rates and egos. Good luck navigating a media frenzy that doesn't stop when you lose 2 straight in January. Kyrie wasn't throwing shade, he was throwing reality. A subtle way of saying, let's see how long that looks good on paper once the game actually starts. And the wildest part, he didn't even raise his voice. Because for Kyrie, this wasn't news. This was muscle memory. He's seen how quickly a super team stops feeling like a super team. How fast the headlines flip when chemistry falters, or roles blur, or one ankle roll derails everything. So while everyone else was watching the Giannis-LeBron buzz like it was the second coming, Kyrie was just nodding internally like someone who'd read this chapter before and turned the page years ago. And now that one line, off the cuff, low-key, thrown with a smile, has shifted the entire tone of the conversation. No longer is it just, can they win now? It's, why did Kyrie say that? What does he know? Is he warning them? Because when a man who's been through every version of super team chaos laughs and says, good luck, maybe we should actually listen. There was no tweet, no press conference detour, no surprise IG story with a loaded caption. LeBron James stayed silent. But in LeBron's universe, silence isn't absence, it's calculation. And in this case, it was signal. The moment Kyrie's quote hit. That's cute, but good luck. It didn't just trend, it pierced. Not because it was aggressive, but because it was dismissive. It wasn't a challenge in tone, it was worse. It was a shrug. And that travels fast. Within minutes, the chatter started in the corners that matter. Inside the Lakers organization, inside Rich Paul's circle, inside the quiet, controlled camp that has kept LeBron James one step ahead for over 2 decades. Because while the public was busy laughing or debating LeBron's inner network did what it always does: obsess. Rev, absorb, and adjust. Nobody said it aloud, but they all knew Kyrie had just planted a seed, not a feud, not a headline war, a question. A question about whether LeBron and Giannis, 2 of the most dominant forces the league has ever seen, could actually coexist without imploding. A question about whether their partnership was strategy or spectacle. A question about how fragile even a super team can become when one person sees the cracks before anyone else admits they're there. LeBron didn't need to say a word, he didn't need to post a thing, because he's mastered the art of internal warfare where public calm masks private urgency. And make no mistake, the urgency spiked the moment that quote went viral. Meetings shifted, JJ Rich was pulled into deeper strategy talks, not just about playbooks, but about personalities. Giannis's camp was reassured, subtly but immediately, that this wasn't just another LeBron maneuver. The Lakers' top brass began closing ranks, not in panic, but in precision, because LeBron knows that narratives can undo super teams faster than any playoff loss. Kyrie didn't just throw a line into the media storm, he threw a truth grenade into a team still figuring out who's driving and who's following. And LeBron, he didn't flinch, but he noticed, because this wasn't the first time someone questioned the dynamics of a LeBron-led partnership. This wasn't the first time someone painted him as the gravitational force that can both elevate and suffocate. And if anyone knows how deep that narrative reaches, it's Kyrie. That's why Bron didn't respond with words, because words invite debate, words validate the doubt. Instead, he responded with silence, the kind that triggers motion behind the scenes, calls to Pelinka, texts to Giannis off their strategy from Rich Paul, mentorship moments relayed through team captains, everything designed to reinforce one message: we're not rattled, we're refining. Because while Kyrie laughed it off publicly, LeBron's crew understood what it really meant. It meant someone's watch. In the kingdom form, and already testing its foundation, not by storming the gates, but by whispering, "Let's see if it holds." And LeBron, he doesn't respond to whispers. He fortifies. Pelenis did what he always does when the media stirs the pot. He smiled, cool, borderline playful when asked about Kyrie's viral line. That's cute, but good luck. He brushed it off like a seasoned veteran. Unfazed by noise, he called Kyrie a great player, said he respects everybody, and reminded reporters once again that the game's played on the court, not in the comments. But deep down, that smile wasn't the whole story. Because Giannis has been in this league long enough to know that when Kyrie speaks, there's always a deeper layer. This wasn't some throwaway soundbite. This was calculated, precise, the kind of line that doesn't try to win a news cycle, it tries to expose a flaw in the blueprint. And that's where it hit Giannis, because he's not some naive superstar hoping talent is enough. He's already climbs a mountain solo. He's already been told he couldn't do it without help, and then did it anyway. Now he's in a new role, a bigger spotlight, more voices in the room, more weight on every possession, not just for him, but for the entire operation. So when Kyrie threw that verbal dart, it didn't bounce off, it sank in, because it wasn't about Kyrie versus LeBron, wasn't even about Giannis directly, it was about structure, it was about chemistry, it was about the unspoken truth that every super team carries. You can't skip the hard part. And that's what Giannis heard. He didn't feel attacked, he felt reminded. Reminded that greatness isn't just stacked, it's earned. Reminded that Kyrie wasn't mocking their potential, he was questioning their readiness. Because Kyrie knows how this plays out. He's lived through a locker room where egos hovered just beneath the surface. He's seen what happens when stars talk like family in the media, but walk like strangers behind the scenes. He's seen dynasties fumble because nobody wanted to say the hard thing until it was too late. So when Giannis hears "good luck holding that together," he doesn't roll his eyes. He nods internally because now he feels it too. The media may run with the quote, the fans may meme it, but Giannis, he's recalibrating. He's watching the dynamics between him and LeBron more closely. He's paying attention to how roles are forming in the locker room. He's taking mental notes of what gets said in front of cameras and what doesn't. Because Kyrie's message wasn't a threat, it was a warning wrapped in a smirk. And for a guy like Giannis, someone who prides himself on accountability, durability, and winning the right way, that kind of message doesn't just fade. It lingers quietly, persistently. It becomes the whisper that follows you into practice, the echo in your mind during late-night film sessions, the thing you remember. When the fourth quarter turns chaotic and you realize all that talk about fit doesn't mean much if no one's willing to sacrifice. Kyrie's quote wasn't about lighting a fire, it was about leaving a mark. And as much as Giannis wants to act like it's business as usual, he knows this isn't the same grind anymore. This is legacy warfare, and Kyrie just reminded him what happens when a team chases greatness without checking its foundation first. The smile stays, but the pressure, now it's personal. And Kyrie said, "That's cute, but good luck." It wasn't just sarcasm, it was history bleeding through every syllable. That smirk, it wasn't arrogance, it was armor. Because Kyrie has seen this story unfold from every possible angle, and no one in the league carries more receipts than him. This wasn't about Giannis, and it wasn't even really about LeBron. It was about the pattern, the same loop the league keeps spinning through: star-driven hype, fan service, super teams, and the assumption that throwing names together guarantees banners. Kyrie knows better. He's worn the jersey. He stood at the center of the storm, and he's walked away from so many can't-miss projects that missed by a mile. Cleveland taught him that legacy doesn't mean control. He was young, gifted, and rising, but the second LeBron returned, the story changed. His story, he went from centerpiece to sidekick overnight. And even with a ring, the credit never sat on his shoulders, only the criticism did. Then came Boston, supposed to be his team, his time. But leadership isn't given, it's earned. Mold, ed and bruised, and that locker room wasn't ready for what Kyrie brought or what he needed. Every quote became a headline, every bad night became a referendum, and no matter how much he adjusted, the narrative had already made up its mind. Brooklyn, that was the NBA's most fragile empire. 3 generational talents, 1 ball, 0 clarity. They were dubbed unstoppable before they ever played a full season together. But culture can't be microwaved, and when pressure hit, the foundation crumbled. So when Kyrie hit ears about another super team built around titles, not trust, he doesn't panic, he doesn't clap back. He just smiles because he's lived it. He's watched how fast chemistry turns to chaos when roles aren't defined, how quickly locker rooms become echo chambers of resentment, how the fans turn, the media spins, and the system devours itself when things go even a little off script. And in all of this, Kyrie's not trying to play prophet, he's just the only one not hypnotized by the headline. That's why his line hit. So hard, that's cute, but good luck. It was surgical, a dismissal, sure, but also a truth bomb, because what looks like a dream to the rest of the league, to Kyrie, it looks like a loop, a rerun, a project built on convenience, not cohesion. And underneath all that, maybe a little sadness. Because Kyrie knows what it takes to actually make it work. The sweat, the stillness, the sacrifice, and he rarely sees anyone really ready to go that far anymore. He's not jealous, he's not bitter, he's tired of pretending like no. Body remembers what really broke all the super teams before. It wasn't talent, it was silence, where communication should have been ego, where humility needed to lead. Posters on the wall instead of culture in the locker room. So yeah, Kyrie laughed, but it wasn't just at them. It was at the whole machine. Because for him, this isn't a new chapter. It's the same book with a different title, and the ending, he's already seen it. Behind closed doors with media-friendly insiders, but that doesn't mean they're not watching closely. Because when Kyrie lets a comment like, "That's cute, but good luck," float into the bloodstream of the league, it doesn't just sting the super team hype, it ripples across every franchise that's ever tried to build something with him. And Dallas, they remember exactly what that felt like. They remember the nights Kyrie and Luka made the game look effortless, like jazz with a handle. They remember how opposing coaches called timeouts out of sheer confusion, not just desperation. They remember how even with the chaos, even with the injuries, even with the shortened timeline, there were flashes, real ones, of something. Undeniable, but they also remember how fast it slipped away. And now they're wondering if that window wasn't a missed shot, but a preview. Because Kyrie doesn't speak by accident, not anymore. That one comment dismissing the super team noise without naming names was a pulse check, A way of saying, I've seen this play before, I know how it ends, and I'm not chasing it. Which leaves Dallas asking the question, then what is he chasing? Because here's the thing, he's not ignoring Luka. He's not rejecting that chapter. He's just letting the league know that clout isn't the mission control, and the Mavericks, especially the ones upstairs, are starting to reread their own past moves, not as failures, but as moments that might have been cut short before they could breathe. The analytics team revisits those on-court splits. The coaches revisit those practice tapes. The front office starts checking in with people who still talk to Kyrie, not because they're ready to make a move, but because they don't want to be caught flat-footed if he does. And Luka, he doesn't say anything either. But the shift in his tone, how he handles press, how he leads in huddles, how he's avoiding the petty narratives says enough. It says, I'm still open to this, if it's real. So now Dallas leans in, not loudly, not arrogantly, but intentionally. Because what they had wasn't just highlight reels and hope. It was chemistry. And chemistry doesn't die. It just waits for the right conditions to spark again. They're not begging Kyrie to come back, but they're no longer closing that tab on their screen either. And that's how it always starts in this league. Not with statements, with silence. Not with demands, with patience. Dallas knows they can't control Kyrie's next chapter, but they can. And speaks in riddles. The league hears chaos. But Dallas hears possibility. The second Kyrie said it, that's cute, but good luck. The media did what it always does when it doesn't understand Kyrie Irving, it panicked. And then it projected. Talk shows scrambled to cut the clip, they looped it next to Giannis highlights and LeBron pressers like it was some declaration of war. Analysts lined up on morning shows with half-baked psychology takes like, he's clearly bitter, this is classic Kyrie sabotage, why can't he just let other players have their moment? The truth, none of them were listening. They were chasing a story, and that thing, Kyrie's known for years now, he doesn't get covered, he gets interpreted. They never quote him for what he says, they quote him for what they think he meant. And this time was no different. The smirk became the headline, the tone became the talking point, and the context, it vanished. Because to them, that's cute. But good luck had to be about resentment, had to be about LeBron, had to be about Kyrie still clinging to relevance. But that's not what he said, and that's not what he meant. He wasn't mocking. Gib, the Giannis-LeBron link-up, he was challenging it not from a place of hate, but from a place of history. Because Kyrie has lived through the storm these two are about to enter. He's walked into a locker room that was too stacked to fail. He's heard the predictions, he's carried the expectations, and he's watched how fragile it all really is. He's seen stars not speak for weeks, seen coaches forced to babysit egos instead of draw plays, seen media praise one day and flip the next because one shooter went cold. So when Kyrie laughs, he's not dismissing greatness, he's questioning the assumption that greatness automatically works when thrown together. But the media didn't care to explain that. They care about friction. They care about headlines. And when Kyrie gives them neither, they invent both. Suddenly, it's Kyrie versus super teams. Suddenly, it's Kyrie still heard about LeBron. Suddenly, it's Dallas drama incoming. And while they're busy dissecting a 6-word quote, they forget to ask the bigger question, why? Why is Kyrie always the one being asked to explain himself? Why is his experience treated like cynicism? Why is his quiet seen as arrogance, and his honesty seen as hostility? Because the media still doesn't know what to do with Kyrie Irving when he isn't playing their game, when he isn't trying to go viral, when he isn't trying to join the noise, when he isn't trying to prove anything. They can't box him in, so they distort him, and this week they did it again. But Kyrie didn't respond. No clarifying tweet, none. A sit-down interview, no podcast to reframe the quote because he doesn't need to. He knows what he meant. Luka knows what he meant. Even LeBron and Giannis deep down know what he meant. And if the rest of the league chooses to keep misreading him, that's fine because Kyrie isn't performing for the timeline anymore. He's not debating his legacy in 30-second clips. He's not auditioning for approval. He's watching, he's calculating, and most importantly, he's moving, while the media spins their usual takes. Kyrie's been in the gym while they argue over his motives. He's been watching film while they question his mindset. He's been preparing for something bigger than the hype because he doesn't need to out-talk the super team storyline. He plans to outlast it. And that's what they're too distracted to see. The headline they missed wasn't the quote. It was the silence after Kyrie's line. Didn't come with fireworks, no podium, no mic drop, just a grin and a line, "That's cute, but good luck." And while social media turned it into a meme, the veterans of the league, those who've been in the trenches long enough to recognize tone over theatrics, heard something else entirely. They didn't laugh, they didn't post. They understood because Kyrie wasn't just reacting to hype, he was exposing a truth. Everyone eventually learns the hard way. Talent doesn't guarantee peace. Star power doesn't guarantee alignment. And chemistry that can't be bought or traded for, not even if you're pairing two generational icons like LeBron and all. Giannis, the younger players, reposted the clip with flame emojis. The analysts debated it with fake urgency. But the veterans? They caught the subtext. They knew Kyrie was speaking to the cracks no one else wanted to admit might exist. Not because he wants the super team to fail, but because he's lived long enough in the league to know how fragile success really is. He's seen it in Cleveland, in Boston, in Brooklyn. He's been the headline, he's been the scapegoat, he's been the star. And every time the expectations drowned out the reality. So when Kyrie laughed, it wasn't out of disrespect, it was out of experience. And the league's veterans, the ones with bad knees and playoff scars, they felt that because they too remember how it goes. Remember how the buzz fades after the first losing streak, how egos creep back in when roles aren't clear, how media narratives split locker rooms before the All-Star break, how everyone loves the word super team until the super stopped showing up. They've seen the montages. They've lived the disappointment. So when Kyrie smirked, the veterans didn't roll their eyes, they nodded. Not because they're rooting against LeBron and Giannis, but because they know how thin the line is between dominance and dysfunction. The truth is, the league has always been full of dream combinations that never clicked. Dwight and Harden, Russ and KD, CP3 and Blake, LeBron and Russ, Kyrie and KD and Harden. On paper, unstoppable. In reality, chaos. The vets know that greatness is only half the battle. Her half is sacrifice. And not everyone's built to do it. That's the part nobody wants to talk about when super teams are trending. The dirty work, the ego swallowing, the fourth-quarter decisions when both stars want the moment, the press conferences after tough losses, when finger-pointing becomes easier than reflection. So Kyrie's quote, "It wasn't petty, it was layered." And the vets got it instantly, even the ones who played against him, even the ones who never shared a locker room. Because the deeper you get into your NBA career, the more you realize how little the hype matters when the playoffs start and the lights get harsh. Kyrie didn't need to name names. The real ones understood the message. It was a warning, not a wish, a reminder, not a jab. And maybe, just maybe, a subtle flex from someone who's not chasing the spotlight anymore. Just peace, rhythm, and a team that actually works. The veterans didn't amplify it, they didn't tweet it, they just tucked it away. Because when the pressure hits and the new super team starts feeling the weight of expectation, they'll remember what Kyrie said, and they'll remember how right he was. This was never about being bitter. It was never about proving a point in public or one-upping a headline or trying to match the weight of two giants, LeBron and Giannis, joining forces. That's not Kyrie's war anymore, because what Kyrie's playing or now doesn't fit in a clip. It's not viral, it's not dramatic, and it's definitely not predictable. His quote, "That's cute, but good luck," wasn't a jab. It was a mirror. A way of saying, I've seen this hype before. I've heard the noise. I've lived through the storm. You're all romanticizing. He's not scoffing at LeBron or Giannis or the idea of a super team. He's scoffing at the idea that this time it's supposed to be different just because the media said so. Like years of tension, ego clashes, playoff collapses, and awkward post-game pressers never existed. Kyrie's not impressed because he's graduated from the illusion. He knows what happens next. He's seen it happen in real time, when the expectations are sky high, when the spotlight never dims, when winning becomes a requirement, not a joy, when the locker room gets too crowded with agendas, when being a teammate means being a therapist, a scapegoat, a savior, all at once. He's not warning them out of bitterness. He's warning them because he's been there. He knows how the league forgets context, how it strips players down into storylines. LeBron's chasing his final run. Giannis is trying to evolve his legacy. And Kyrie, he's torn. Trying to live in a version of the league where legacy isn't something manufactured. It's earned, slowly, quietly. That's why his line hit so hard, because it wasn't loud, but it was loaded. It came from someone who's had every label thrown at him and still walks into every arena like his name is enough. No entourage, no campaign, just game. And maybe that's why it shook something inside the league, because deep down, the ones who've made it through enough seasons know Kyrie's not bluffing. They know. He's the type of player who doesn't need the system to validate him. He built his own system. He's not on social media explaining it. He's not asking for understanding. He's not doing interviews to soften the tone. He lets the work speak. He lets the peace speak louder than the conflict. And the scary part, he's still dangerous, still capable of stepping on any court and controlling the rhythm like a composer, still capable of being the player that makes every plan fall apart because he doesn't fit into anyone's script but his own. That's the part that should worry the league, because Kyrie Irving isn't trying to stop anyone's rise. He's just not going to stand quietly while they rewrite a history he helped create. Before super teams were cute graphics, before player empowerment became a sanitized buzzword, before teaming up was a business model, Kyrie was doing it for real, with emotion, with fire, with friction, with LeBron, with KD, with Harden, with Luka, and every time the system tried to flatten the story, every time the nuance was ignored, but Kyrie didn't fold. He just evolved. Now he doesn't need the crown. He doesn't need the parade. He doesn't even need the credit. He just wants something real. So when he says good luck, it's not a threat. It's a quiet exit from a conversation he doesn't need anymore, because he's not trying to belong to the league's narrative. He's writing his own. He's not trying to match energy. He's conserving his. He's not bitter about being left out. He's just not surprised. And that's what makes him more dangerous than ever, because while LeBron and Giannis chase a new throne, Kyrie is sitting with the understanding that his throne was never up for debate. It just looked different. It wasn't built from titles, it was built from resistance, from resilience, from refusing to become what the league wanted him to be. And now he doesn't need validation. Because when the hype fades, when the rotations get hard, when the super team starts to feel more like a burden than a gift, people will look back and remember that Kyrie already told them how this ends. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because this isn't about proving anything anymore. This is about walking your truth without asking for applause. And that's what Kyrie is doing. So if the league still doesn't get it, he'll just smile again and walk right.